All right. Well, welcome everyone. And we are here today with Ilya from Near Protocol. So you may have already known who Ilya is. We're going to talk about a couple of things focused on everything from his career, how he got into, becoming a founder, but also a lot about the current roadmap of what Near is going to be doing over the next few months, few years, or whatever. So go ahead, if you don't mind, give us a quick intro, talk about just give us an intro to who you are and what I guess the current focus of Near is.
For sure, yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. Great to be here. And yeah, I'm Ilya. My background and kind of before the jumping into a blockchain rabbit hole, I was machine learning kind of researcher and engineer, and I worked at Google Research, leading team that worked on question answering, machine translation, and kind of related topics. Now, kind of back in 2016, we had a very interesting challenge, which was the research we were doing were not usable in production because Google has such a low latency requirements, and the models we were using did not match that. And so I ended up kind of working with a team of researchers on what is known now as transformers, which is powering ChatGPT, Midjourney, Gemini, and all of the work. Now, I left Google and we started Near AI. Near AI was an AI company that focused on teaching machines to code. And this really comes from like a very deep, like rooted belief that few things are true. One is we're going to change dramatically how we interact with compute. And we're going to be talking natural language, not in kind of code. And when that happens, we're going to see a transformation, right? Software is already eating the world, but if you're able to build software custom on the fly for any use case and any user, then this transformation will be completely different, right? Imagine how many people are like looking at some data and don't know how to make sense of it. People who, right now struggling with like building out a workflow or doing something manually, all of that will be automated. But even beyond that, this research to actually make kind of machines to code actually is needed. Like this is what's needed and really good place to test reasoning of the AI, right? And so this is actually on a path to AGI. And so it's kind of so-called like the plan is, build AI developer, use AI developer to build AI researcher, use AI researcher to research AGI, kind of to advance the understanding of research. And so we started in 2017, and back then it sounded delusional, right? It sounded like science fiction, that computers will code. And we were early, and we were not, we were not funded by billionaires. And so we didn't have that much resources. We were trying to be smart. So we were actually engaging a lot of students, computer science students around the world, to do data labeling tasks for us. They would write code, they would write comments for code. We had a challenge paying them because they were in China, they were in Eastern Europe. US doesn't like sending money to these countries. Some of those countries don't like to accept dollars. Students don't have bank accounts. So all of these challenges that, crypto is actually like well marketed to be solving. And so we started looking at crypto because of that. And we found pretty quickly that, neither Bitcoin or Ethereum, even back then, would work for us because the fees were just too high, right? We were paying people, 15 cents per task, and the fees were like 30 cents already back then. And so kind of, as you dig deeper, you're like, okay, well, why is that true? I mean, obviously scalability comes to mind. And being like the background, my co-founder builds sharded database that's used by Fortune 500 companies. I'm coming from Google where everything is, scalable and sharded. We were like, well, it's pretty clear for us that blockchain needs to be sharded going forward if we want this to be usable. And so we ended up pivoting from Near AI to focus on building out the blockchain, Near Protocol, that it was kind of focused on how do we make it truly scale, easy to use, and easy to build on, right? Now, fast forward, right, we launched it in 2020. We have pretty much seen 10x growth every year. So we went from 10,000 to 100,000 to a million to 10 million users at this point, monthly actives. We are the most
for
used.
Near.
Yeah, for Near protocol. Yeah,
Got it.
Near right now has over like 2 million daily active accounts. Like on most of the days, we're the top most used blockchain in Web3. We have like 8-9 million transactions per day. And we've proven out the whole point of sharding. We actually had a growth spur with a hot wallet launching in March, April. And we added 2 more shards. We expanded the network, we added capacity, and it went from like, oh, there's congestion network to no congestion. Fees are all stable. So the whole idea of like, hey, sharding will help to keep low fees for everyone while increasing capacity. It works and kind of proven out. Now there's still a lot work on building out some pieces for the blockchain itself. We are launching so-called status validation, which would allow us to have tens of thousands of validators on a network, actually allow us to grow number of shards more because right now there's some limits. But all of that is kind of it's there. There's a really amazing team on it, but we kind of obviously past couple of years been focused on how do we expand the ecosystem. And so this is where things getting interesting, right? Obviously, we've seen LLMs and kind of AI, showcasing what you can do. People are a lot more positive of what's possible now. And same time, we're in an interesting state in Web3 where we say we want to compete with Web2, but we have like 7,000 full-time developers, right? Maybe like 20,000 that are like contributing from time to time. And that's a very little. That's like one department at Google, right?
Right. Yeah. That's something
It's
that
like
I've
one product.
talked about quite a bit. It's just an order of magnitudes or more than one order of magnitude less.
Yeah, it's many orders of magnitudes lower. Yeah. And so kind of as we're working on so my co-founder actually he was focused on AI stuff for past year and a half. He was working on some of the foundational model stuff and kind of researching it. And kind of as we were discussing it, the reality has been, well, actually, if we do want to have a competitive Web3 ecosystem, right, and we believe this future is coming, probably like waiting until we can get enough developers to rebuild everything is not realistic. And generally, like there's this kind of a weird state right now where the applications are not getting funded, and so there's really no easy way to actually like build out this application infrastructure, application ecosystem. And so now the Web3 applications are actually pretty valuable, right? The amount of like value per line of code compared to Web2 application like a SaaS software is pretty amazing. Just because you have such a massive composability, and so you can like plug it, like anything you build, like then a bunch of other applications can use and leverage up. And they're pretty small relatively, right? The smart contracts are smaller, and you can have like better separation. And so the Near AI kind of hypothesis, and so we established this kind of reestablished back Near AI as part of kind of Near ecosystem is we want to teach machines to code Web3 applications to start. They're small, they're valuable. We can use it to bootstrap the whole ecosystem, and it can now use scalable, easy to use infrastructure underneath. And even if it's not like 100% works yet, right? Like we can close that gap by getting developers who are in Near ecosystem, who are building applications anyway, to actually contribute and fix some of the issues. And so through this, we can have kind of both advancing research as well as growing the Near ecosystem and kind of Web3 ecosystem as a whole by building out all of those different applications that people want. And so that's kind of what Near AI is right now doing. We're going to be showcasing and releasing something in a couple of weeks where people can actually start playing around, describing what applications they want to build. It will, generate specification, and you'll be able to kind of engage and iterate on it. And then we'll go and have kind of AI plus people plus developers together building those applications for you. It's all going to be open source. And so we're going to, pretty much bootstrapping like a massive amount of applications, at least build. Obviously, still need to launch them and, grow usage, but at least there'll be a lot of kind of open source software of applications in the ecosystem. And in meantime, we collecting data, we iterating on the model, we actually strengthening some of the reasoning capabilities that are required to actually be effective at doing this. And we're going to be talking about that as well, how that works.
Okay, so I want to really dive into that part, but before we do that, let's go back a little bit. You touched on this just in the beginning. I think that people know you as a blockchain founder, but you actually had this whole career in AI that you just touched on for a second. And it's interesting because like the cloud era is kind of like old news now, and it's very stable. Things are working great, but there isn't like a ton of innovation happening. Like all the innovation seems to be happening in blockchains and in AI. And it's interesting that you've kind of had, an expertise or specialization in both those areas, and they're kind of like converging at this moment. But can you talk about like what your experience was like in the AI space, and what are some of the things that you worked on there, so people can kind of better understand, where you're coming from?
For sure, yeah. Well, so I actually started working on machine learning when I was 17 because I was really excited about this back in high school. I built my first neural network when I was like 15 or something, or 14, and to for context, obviously neural networks and all the stuff existed for since 60s. Obviously, they were not deep, they were not working as well. But yeah, I mean, my background, like I started with more traditional machine learning, like random forest, gradient boosted trees, basically linear regressions. And I worked across everything from cancer detection, from DNA sequencing to, insurance and kind of credit fraud. But when I joined Google, I joined it because I saw the cat neuron paper that Jeff Dean and Andrew Yang published, where they trained a model, right, without any supervision to just, take an image, compress it into a vector, and decompress it back into the image. And when they looked at it, it learned how to detect cats, right? There was a specific neuron that would activate when you show cats. And that was to me, like a signal, hey, we're getting to a level where pretty much you can train models without supervision to learn the world. Now, that was still early, right? That was 2012, 2013. So I joined in January 2014 Google with a specific kind of thesis from my side was natural language is where the knowledge and world understanding lies, right? Like there's thousands of species that understand visual, can see, but only one that has developed language and kind of, shares knowledge, etc. And so I worked on natural language understanding. We build question answering systems, meaning when you before the last Gemini launch, when you were asking questions in the Google.com and saw an answer that was pulled out from an article that was powered by a machine learning model we were building. And so it would read all the articles, right? Read actual text and respond and try to generate a proper answer. So for those who are now know potentially this as perplexity, Google had that, internally, in research in 15, 16. Now, as I said, it wasn't fast, right? It wasn't able to be able to respond quickly. And so that's, as I mentioned, we've developed transformers, the architecture that's used now across pretty much everything in deep learning. And so I'm one of the original, I actually coded it up after we had lunch with Jakob, who kind of, had this original idea. And so I went and coded it up because I actually had more time as I was planning to leave already Google. And so obviously it was a huge team effort across, all the 8 authors to get it to like really scale and really show that it beats state of the art. But yeah, my background is pretty much in developing what now became like large language models.
Got it. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think like one of
So,
the things that no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I remember there was a tweet. Somebody tweeted like, oh, Ilya has whatever, like 5 years of, or like 7 years of experience with LLMs, and somebody's like, they didn't exist 7 years ago. It's like, yeah.
Got it. Yeah, people just don't know how much, I guess, time and effort and history has gone into a lot of this stuff because it's just now kind of coming into people's visibility. But even GPT had been out for a year or year and a half or even 2 years maybe or something like that before it really got popular. Like it existed and people were playing around with it, but you didn't see any of those demos on Twitter that went viral or went on the like that made the news that you started seeing. I think when like GPT-3 came out.
So GPT, yeah, there was GPT-1, GPT-2, and then GPT-3. So GPT-3 was available. It was like a thing. It was just not very interesting. It wasn't so-called fine-tuned. It didn't have the instruction set up, meaning like you would give, like if you wanted to write a random article that didn't make any sense, it would do that. But and it would be good for like completions, but it didn't actually like respond questions or do instructions. And so that's kind of where the change happened. What that ChatGPT was really just like showcasing that. It's like, oh, actually, if you fine tune on answering questions and doing some of the like reasoning tasks, GPT 3.5, which end up right, is actually really good. And again, obviously GPT-4 came out after that, kind of completely like showcasing what you can do even more. But I think that was a transition. Like, yes, language models existed. They've been around. They were okay. They were not amazing, but they also like Google used. So there's a model called BERT, which been used since 2018. So they use transformers. They've pre-trained with GPT style, and then they fine-tuned on question answering, and that's what been running at Google.com. Right. So like it's all existed. Like Google Translate been using transformers also since 2018. Like there was actually I remember that moment because they launched it, and like I was learning Chinese at the time, and it just like Chinese became way better, like Chinese to English or Chinese to Russian, like specifically two weird languages translation to each other. Just like that translation became way better after launch of transformers. So these models existed. They were kind of here and there. They just weren't like accessible to everyone, and it's at like large scale that we see them now. And so what happened, like what OpenAI did an amazing job with is like really scaling them up and like, shoving an insane amount of training data into them to really get them like this reasoning capability that we haven't seen anywhere else in machine learning.
Yeah, I think like the one thing also that has made a big difference is the speed, because when you look at how APIs work in the real world today, it's all about speed, and it opens up just an order of magnitude more use cases when you can start treating all these different open source models that are hosted, I guess, that you can host yourself also, I guess, as almost like an API that you can use to interact with in real time, or to use as like an actual API that returns JSON or some other type of data format for you to use in your application, which is kind of like where it seems like this stuff is headed.
Yeah, I mean, I think also like really interesting use case being like kind of turning this into agents, right, where they self-prompting or in some way operating on some rules. And I think that as well came also from realization that now like you kind of can like program it with English, right? And that's kind of where like I started this. I started my introduction is like I really believe like the way we're gonna interact with computing is changing, right? And ChatGPT was just like a first example of that, right? And kind of this agent systems are the next one. It's now less about coding a specific, fixed set of rules, but more about creating kind of like, in English, like semantically what you want, right? Now the problem is like it doesn't, always work. It has, edge cases, etc., which is usually the same thing we have with natural language, right? If I, describe a specification of something, it may still have edge cases, etc. And so these models need to learn how to handle kind of what are the good ways to handle edge cases in general, right? And that's where reasoning comes in. Like these models right now don't have really good reasoning. They kind of work as like a statistical average of everything it knows. It doesn't have like, actually, in this case, I need to do something different because, I want to achieve this goal. Like it doesn't have that ability to refine kind of the output it already had. And that's something actually, I'm really excited to kind of continue research on and figure out how we can improve it. And as I said, the code is a really good platform for that because, you can test it, you can make sure, you can actually have formal proofs if you need. And so we have a lot of tooling to how to understand if something is wrong or like if it works incorrectly. And so you can actually test all of this reasoning capabilities way easier.
Okay, so moving on to how Near is implementing some of the stuff that you talked about earlier. What is the actual developer facing experience going to look like? What is the like APIs, SDKs that can be used, and how would they be used in kind of like a day to day for a developer that would be comparable or some type of analogous to something that already exists today?
Yeah, there's like few things. And for kind of for clarity, like Near AI team is doing few things, and then there's a lot of other teams working on lots of different things, right, in the ecosystem. And so I'll start with those. There's everything from provable inference, data marketplaces, crowdsourcing, synthetic data, all kinds of things that you can like tap into. That leveraging, blockchain for identity, for payments, for kind of coordination, provenance, transparency, like verification, the game theory, etc. Like there's ton of ways you can leverage it. Now, what specifically we're doing at Near AI is we want to really provide this kind of not only developer but end user experience, right? Like you have an idea, right? It can be a note-taking app that doesn't upload all your data to Google or Apple. It can be a new automated market maker that has a different approach how it manages liquidity, for example, by using a AI model to decide how to balance the pools or how to price the pools. Or you can describe that and it will try to write the specification for you. And so that step to me is actually more important than coding, because coding, if you already know what you want to do, writing it in code, right, if you're an effective developer, is not that hard. The biggest problem is actually figuring out what you want to do and making sure it's complete and makes sense. And so that's kind of one of the steps we really want to make easy for everyone is actually discovering what you want to build and how it should work and kind of refining that process. And again, the idea here is really we want to focus on everyone, not just developers. Anybody who has an idea, anybody who wants to solve some problem for themselves. And again, we started with Web3 space, and kind of we're going to be expanding like what you can do in Web3, because obviously I believe that is the way forward, how all of the software will be built. And then the second step will be, it'll, in eventuality, when everything works, you'll click a button, you'll get a coffee, and it will build you the full application, and you'll be able to use it, to try it out, and then go iterate maybe on spec. Like, oh, actually, I want this feature. Oh, this button should be blue. So that's kind of the platform, right? There's a lot of APIs underneath, everything from the blockchain APIs that Near provides to AI APIs that we both going to use some centralized providers as well as decentralized providers that are built on Near. And this is actually one of the interesting concepts, is like you want AI provider that works, and all of these APIs, you want them to work with blockchain accounts, because right now you have API keys, you have like credit card billing, you have all those set up. You don't have like per interaction payments. So one of the kind of underlying pieces is like, how do we have an API payment infrastructure that then works across AI, across regular APIs, across data storage, across everything. But the kind of the product that it pulls all together will be building applications and kind of iterating on them really quickly.
Got it. So like one of the main, so is the main use case going to be for scaffolding code bases? Is that the general idea?
Well, ideally, we want like to build full applications,
or
but
full
yes, I mean,
applications? Yeah.
yeah, initially it will be like getting to an application as quick as possible, and then we're gonna have developers engaged in the ecosystem who are actually gonna finish building it
Right,
in
right. So it
our
kind of like
setup.
gets you like 90% of the way there, and then you go and you polish and
Yeah,
modify
yeah,
like design or whatever. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So this would be something like what is it, V0.1 from Vercel? I forgot the name of it, but it's something like
yeah.
that.
I think it's V0 or something. Yeah, exactly.
V0.
So similar to that, but Vercel is only doing front end. We're also gonna do smart contract, middleware, like indexing data, etc. All of this stuff. So and some P2P protocol stuff.
Will this support other protocols other than Near? Like, will you be able to write EVM, or is this mainly for Near protocol apps?
I mean, we started with like Rust smart contracts. I mean, we can explore some other alternatives. I mean, for smart contracts, again, it really depends on like what's the best tool for the job. Near launch chain signatures, we actually can tap into other smart contracts. So maybe we'll just call out into EVM through chain signatures when you do need something from EVM. Maybe like part of the smart contract is running on another chain. So yeah, it depends what the application is going to be as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think like one of the biggest barriers to entry for Web3 is obviously smart contract development. So do you see this as a way to kind of get more people shipping products in this space and experimenting more?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is like, well, as I mentioned, right? Given how little developers we have, we need anything we can do to like expand that, and as well because we have this challenge of like applications not getting funded. So even getting to a prototype, right? Like you don't have funds to do that. So this is actually like solve that. Like you can get to a prototype, you can get first users, and you can already go start, potentially fundraise with something started, as well as just like one of the other challenges with smart contracts is that you need to write them in a proof like in a correct way, right? And it's really hard. Like that's like the kind of the barrier is really not. I mean, at least like for Rust smart contracts, or we have JavaScript kind of contracts on Near. It's not that it's hard to write them. It's hard to write them correctly and like be sure they're correct. And so one of the kind of again piece of research we're doing is like how do we have verifiability that this smart contract indeed satisfies the requirements, right? Doesn't lose money, doesn't have bugs, etc. And again, looking forward, the challenge actually that with AI coming, with OLMs coming, is that they're actually way more effective at finding bugs in existing code than the other way around. And so we are potentially approaching a world where we'll see more and more cybersecurity vulnerabilities coming because AI is able to detect them. And so we need to start thinking, how do we build kind of provable code in general? Like how do we have a provable software? But like we know people are always will make bugs, right? Like there's like a statistic, so like 2-3 bugs on 10,000 lines of code, just like even in high quality code with tests. So we need to start writing something that you can actually formally verify, and to do that you need well specified what you want to build. So you kind of the way we're setting this up is also very well fit for kind of formal verification under the hood. And then again, expanding that to other pieces of tech.
Yeah, so it's always like the entry point into Hello World writing Solidity is very, very simple for pretty much any developer, even if they're not a Web3 developer. But the difference between a Hello World and then something that's production ready and in the Web3 space is completely night and day. Because I think in like even cloud, or if you're building like full stack apps or whatever, wherever you're building, if it's not blockchain related, you can often have a bug, right? And it's not going to be the end of the world.
Yeah,
But like in a smart contract, it's not like that. So the difference, I think, is actually quite stark, and it's something that isn't really talked about like all that much. Like we know that smart contract risk is massive in terms of like DeFi and how one mistake can be the end of the world, literally for a company. But in the traditional world, we're just like shipping code, we're finding bugs, we're fixing them, but it's just a lot different. So I think like what you then end up having are much fewer what I would call like senior or level or expert engineers that are in the blockchain world versus like everyone else. Whereas there's more of a like variety, I think, in the traditional tech world because there's more room for intermediate level people. Whereas in this world, like for DeFi and for any application really that is used by a lot of people, there's just much less room for those types of mistakes, and therefore there are less intermediate level people. So therefore, a tool like this, if it actually worked, would be that much more valuable.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as you rightfully said, yeah, there's like just very few people who actually know how to do it because they went through the situations and audits and everything and kind of sadly stepped on all the mines on the way. But going through that journey is really hard. And like I see projects over and over just not launching because they were, like they kind of iterated on their smart contract, they went to an audit, and then audits are expensive, and so they're like, oh, we don't want to launch yet without an audit, but then we don't have money, for example, for an audit yet. So we're going to fundraise, but then fundraise is like, well, you should launch. So it's all the chicken and egg problems that kind of keep getting stuck. Yeah. So the more we can lower this barrier, but also broadly, the more we can enable everyone to build their own software. Um, and again, like smart contracts is just part of this. Like I look at Web3 more broadly and kind of this new internet. And so there will be a lot more just like peer-to-peer payments and like decentralized, communication, storage, inference, etc. Like all of those pieces will be there, like API servers that are, discoverable on the peer-to-peer network. So all of that will be like pieces of that infrastructure as well, because part of it is also just like not everything should be a smart contract, right? Smart contracts are really good at some things, but if you want to build a node-taking app, you don't want to store nodes on blockchain. So just having some of those like also infrastructure available is important. And I feel like just the way the Web3 been developing, just like a lot of this is kind of not clear, like because like, we didn't have enough applications to actually drive the pressure on the infrastructure. So part of what I'm excited about, and we're gonna actually have community to contribute ideas and of the applications, is to see what are the infrastructures truly missing right now in Web3, so that actually we can get that built as well to power it, right? And I'm expecting a lot of it also will be around how to use AI inside applications as well, right? So having some of that kind of interactivity.
So what else is going on at Near? Like, what are some of the other initiatives that you think are going to be playing out over the next year or two?
Yeah, so I mean, the big initiative we actually started. It started in like end of 22, so it's been a while, and we call it chain abstraction now, right? It originally was a blockchain operating system, and so this is the idea that Near started as like, okay, well, we want to make it really easy for anyone to build and then use. So we did a lot to abstract the blockchain for Near, right? So we have meta transactions, we have account abstraction, we have kind of really easy onboarding with Face ID, like passkey check, and so because of this, we have all those users who may not even know they're using Near, right? They're just receiving assets or paying with like 100x cheaper than Stripe. Now the kind of end of 22 realization was like, okay, well, yes, Near is great, but there will be a lot of other chains, right? Like that's just inevitable. And like how do we bring that logic of abstracting the blockchain to everything, right? To like really unite the whole Web3 space. And so that's what kind of chain abstraction. Then we started from front ends and kind of created like this one place where you can go and actually see all the applications from different chains, right? I mean, we've talked about that earlier. It was like, I mean, last year about like using Lens and Near Social in one place. Kind of we have DabDab, which actually has like 15 different layer twos in one application, one UI. They have like almost 200 different DeFi apps, I guess a bridge that unites all bridges. So they have all of that experience kind of packaging everything into one app. And kind of the next stack we worked on, meanwhile, is chain signatures, which allows to pretty much sign something on Near, and then it becomes a transaction for other chain, right? So you kind of have like linked accounts across other chains. And so now you're able to go to your application, to your wallet, do something, and then you don't care if that thing is on another chain, right? Somebody else will take care of paying the transaction fees, will route the transaction, right? You're just kind of interacting as if it was just one app. So you don't need to switch networks, you don't need to change wallets, you don't need to figure out, or like this is Bitcoin, I cannot actually use my EVM wallet, or like this is Solana, I need this. Like all of that is fully abstracted out. And so that's kind of what we're bringing all together now, right? I mean, it took some time to build out all the pieces, but now we have kind of two directions, right? One is what Hot just launched. You directly in Telegram, right, can transact on Near and Base now, right? They have it all live. And they do all the bridging, they do all the transaction fee management, and then the other one is like smart contracts. You can build a DAO, a multisig, a token, or a DEX that actually can transact across all chains, right? So imagine you have a DEX that can trade Bitcoin for Sol, right? Fully decentralized, fully non-custodial, and like you don't need to think about like fees and like that works. So that's really what kind of coming together now, kind of across a bunch of teams in the ecosystem.
I think one of the big narratives right now are like the things that people are starting to realize is just important and people are valuing. And maybe this has always been the case, but maybe I'm just noticing it more. But honestly, I think it's actually not true. I think it really is becoming more of a narrative because we're starting to see actual networks that can have high performance and high throughput and, essentially consider abstracting away gas and transaction costs and things like that. So we see Solana doing a good job of that, especially with their marketing, and I think they've done a good job with adoption. Base seems to be doing a pretty good job of that right now. I think like one of the reasons that Solana had great adoption was the wallet UX of Phantom. It just felt much better than anything else that was out there. Base is doing a good job for a lot of different reasons. I'm wondering with Near, like what does it look like for really underscoring some of the value propositions that Near has that people like might not already know about because it already has, I think, been one of the fastest and cheapest networks that are that are out there. Is it and what do you think about the wallet experience of Near? Is there room to improve there, or is it good and people just don't know about it? I have been using Near for a while, but just curious because you obviously have a lot more experience there. So I'm just curious your takes on this whole just general discussion.
Yeah, so I actually think Near's wallets are really good. And so I just actually sent you a couple to try if you haven't tried it. But so there's a Mint-based wallet which uses passkey. So if you have iPhone, it's just Face ID. If you have then you go on a Mac, it's just a fingerprint, and it actually is the same account. So and like that experience is like if you at least if you have like Apple or similarly Google setup, it just works. It's like it's magical, right? And the key is stored in secure enclave on your devices, right? It's actually the best way you can store your kind of cryptographic material. So and it's like backed up into iCloud, which is like HSM as well that Apple ran. And the cool thing is Near is has native account abstraction, so you can always add another key. You can rotate it out. You don't trust Apple, or like you have a lot more money, you can switch to Ledger, etc. And then you have meta transactions, right? So you don't need to pay transaction fees, for example, and you can kind of plug into the whole ecosystem. Hot is also very interesting. So they just integrated in Telegram as a Telegram bot. You sign up, you get a .t, like your Telegram account .tg is your account now. And again, they have all of this kind of features, including they're going to be launching 2FA. You can transact on Base. You sign up within like 10 seconds. So all of those experiences are here now. Like you can use passkey, you can use kind of in Telegram recovery. There's people working on social recovery, 2FA. All of these pieces are there. And it's powered by the fact that we have, native account abstraction, kind of many different keys with different permissions available on account. We have meta transactions, and we have, indeed low transaction fees, so applications can cover that. Yeah, I mean, from this perspective, again, that's why we've seen pretty much Near's usage being kind of growing extremely fast. Yeah, and somebody's mentioned on YouTube, I think the Meteor as well has a really straightforward experience. And you can know, like on Meteor is actually, like I use Meteor for Ledger because like you can sign up really easily and then you add Ledger, right? You like upgrade your security, which again, like no other blockchain offers you that you can like start less secure because you don't have anything and then upgrade your security to whatever level kind of when you are.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we need stuff like that just for new people to kind of abstract away that initial bad UX that we're so used to with like private keys and all that stuff. So Hot, Meteor, Mintbase, for anyone watching, go check those out. I did drop a link to one of those in the tweet below if you're watching this on Twitter. So, but we typically try to keep these around 45 minutes. So I think we're about there on time. But before we wrap it up, is there anything that you wanted to call out if someone wants to maybe keep up with what's going on and they want to maybe participate in the Near ecosystem, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, check out Hot because they actually now have an applications tab there, and so it has a ton of stuff like launching almost like every week. So I think like that's probably one of the best places to keep up with things, and they have updates. And then I mean, follow me on Twitter, right? Always the best way to keep updated on some of the things. We're gonna be releasing some things to engage with in next couple of weeks from a Near AI side. So I'm actually really excited to like invite everyone to participate to that.
Got it. So for people that don't already follow him on Twitter, his handle is IL Black Dragon. So
Yeah,
okay, cool. Well, yeah, this has been great. I'm glad we got to catch up. I see you all the time at like conferences, and it's always so hectic and chaotic. We never get to actually chat. So I've been using these like live streams as a chance to sit down and talk to the like people that I want to talk to, my friends and stuff. Anyway, so this is kind of a good excuse for us to sit down away from the conference and catch up. So yeah, really excited about all this stuff. I think that like having someone like you that's has the experience in both of these areas combining them and it's just really interesting and exciting. Hopefully can become something that is really great. I really like the potential there, so looking forward to see what happens.
I appreciate it. Yeah, been great to chat as well.
All right, thanks for checking this out, everybody, and we will wrap it up and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye.